Have you ever wanted to create your own point of sale application in Excel, but didn't know where to start? Hi, this is Randy with Excel for Freelancers. And in today's training, we're going to create this incredible pharmacy point of sale application completely from scratch, including search by UPC, search by medication name, a full featured category and subcategory search, along with search order and a whole lot more. It's going to be a great training. I cannot wait, so let's get started. Alrighty, thank you so much for joining me, everyone. I really do appreciate it. By popular demand, the pharmacy point of sale. In fact, I've kept this one simple enough. We're going to be able to create this completely from scratch together during the training. So it's going to be a fantastic training. You will not miss a minute of it. Make sure you do get subscribed and go ahead and click like and share this video. I really do appreciate it. This template, like every other, is absolutely free. All you need to do is look for the word download in the description below, click the link there and put your name, email, and I'll make sure to get that sent right over to you. I do appreciate your continued support right here on the channel. I create comprehensive application deliveries every single Tuesday for you, and along with the VBA basic videos every single weekend to make sure that you are not just good at Excel, but I want to make you successful with Excel. So that's my goal here. We're going to get started right away. I'm going to share a little information about this application. I'm going to switch to a different workbook, and then we're going to start from scratch. So we're going to be going over every single step. If you are new to Excel or this is your first, I will be going very slowly, as slow as possible. However, feel free to watch this video as many times as you want and download the template. To support this channel, there are so many great ways. I've also have the Ultimate Developers VBA library. I've got over 500 macros of my best macros that I put years and years in available inside that Ultimate Developers VBA library. So if you grab that, I've got a very low price, and it also really supports the channel and helps you create these incredible applications in no time at all. All right, let's get started on this training. We're going to go over a brief overview of this. We've got a list of categories of all of our medications. Each medication has a subcategory, and then we would then select the type. And then once we select it, either gets added to this list, or if it's already on this list, you'll see the quantity will automatically update. So if I select here, you notice how this first one, our default quantity on this item is 5. So when I keep selecting it, it increases by 5, whatever the default quantity is. And of course, this list builds out. So if I select something that is not in this list, it's going to get added at the bottom. Well, let's go ahead and select something here at the bottom, and you see that this one gets added at the bottom. So any new item will automatically get selected. If I want to search for an existing item or a new item, I can do that. So for example, 91467, I'm going to search for that UPC. It's going to show up. Whoops, let's do that again. 91467. It's going to show up right down here. I can select it, and it's going to either add or update the existing. I can also search by name. So we're going to put that in here, and that means any medication that contains the text OL is going to be here, and then I can simply just select it and add it onto our point of sale receipt here. I can add a new order. I can save and next, which will save it. I can add a new order. I can print the receipt, and I can also void an order. I can search for an existing order by entering it here. I can also put in the payment amount if there was a payment. How much was paid on that will automatically come up. Our receipt will have default tax, so we can set up the tax inside the admin. Whether we're charging tax or not would be a yes or no. What is the name of that tax? We can set that to any. And what is the tax rate? We also have payment type, so the admin's very simple. So that's going to be in here. So whatever that tax is going to appear here, the amount, the payment amount, and the change. We can void any order simply by clicking void, and we'll be able to void the order. Now, the database of this is relatively simple. We can look at our medications, and we have all of our medications list. Our medications include an ID, a UPC name, a category, a subcategory, the dosage instructions, which also come on to the POS right here, or extends it a little bit over there. So I can update that. We can bring that up a little bit so we have more space. So we've got the dosage instructions. We have a lot of information that we can use on these. If it's been voided, all the quantity and price and the totals will be cleared out. If it has not, they're going to show up here. So that's going to be helpful. And also we have our sales price if we want to put a sales price in, the purchase price if we want to use that, and the quantity on hand. That's going to be helpful. We have a list of orders. These are all the orders that have been created. The status, notice the first two were void. These are pending. And we also have a list of order items. Now, these are the items that are going on any individual orders. As we can see, all of these are for order number 1. These are for order number 2, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the basic rundown. It's a very simple application. And I'm going to be coding everything with you together today. So we're going to get started right away. So this is exactly what we're going to be creating. This is the sample. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one over to my other screen. I can keep an eye on it from there. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with this blank worksheet. Now, to make things a little bit quicker on this particular one, I do have here an admin sheet that's already the same. And I've got, of course, our database filled out, an order list and some data. But the point of sale is what we're going to be creating together. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that and working with you on that. So this particular trading came by popular request. So if we take a look inside my YouTube, we see we've got a lot of, I've filtered it by pharmacy, a lot of requests on pharmacy. So I do pay attention. So thank you for your ideas on pharmacies. We have now created it. And of course, on our Patreon platform next week, I'll be adding even more features. So make sure that you do get on our Patreon platform because it is based on the features that you want. Great. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take the first two columns and we're going to save those for admin. If you've watched my videos before, you see this is a common idea because those columns can be hidden. And what we're going to do is I'm going to just use a text string, the top of it. I've actually got something here that's kind of formatted already. It makes things a little bit quicker because I could just copy this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to paste it right here. And we're going to call this here our pharmacy point of sale. That's going to give us our header. So we'll do pharmacy POS. So that's going to be it for the title. I've got a logo and a few other things that we'll be adding. Notice that there was a custom background image on here. Now, if you want to create your own custom background image, it's relatively easy. Let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to go into something called a photo editor. This is called Pixlr. It's a free editor and I use it. So I want to create a brand new image. So I'm going to click new and I want a very specific, just for this training, I'm going to use 2750 because that's about the resolution of this training. And we're going to go by 1350. So that's going to be sufficient. So I'm going to create a brand new background just like that. Then what I want to use, I want to use this gradient here. And I've already got a color set up, but you can set the gradients here. You can set your beginning color, your ending color, whatever you want to do. So I'm just going to take this gradient tool and I'm just going to bring it right down here. That's going to give us a nice background. So I'm going to use something vertical like that. Now, if I wanted to do something, a little bit crazier, I could do something like that, but you get the idea. So I just want it from light to dark. So I'm going to do something like that. Then all I need to do is just save it. And I'm going to save it as a JPEG here. And I'm going to give it a high quality and we want that size. That's all I've done. Once you have it inside your computer under that JPEG, what we're going to do is we're going to go back into our application here. I'm going to go into the page layout and then I'm going to go into the background. And I've got, of course, created it ready and from a file. And I've saved it right here. And I'm just going to insert this. I'm going to click open. So what that's going to do is going to add that background for us. So it's got a nice background color. Very good. So let's start adding some information in here. There's a little bit of formatting that's been done, but not too much. So inside D3, I want to put the information. So we're going to use this. I'll use all in capitals. Select or search medications. So inside here, in fact, in E, I'm going to put search by UPC. And right now we got the grid lines, but we'll be hiding them later. And then right here, I'm going to put search by medication name. I'm going to right justify both of those here. Actually, what I'll do is I'm going to hold down both of those because these are going to be merge and center. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge and center them. Then I'm going to right justify them. So here's where they're going to enter. So I'm just going to color those white. Wherever the user is going to enter something, it's white. And I'm going to merge and center this right over here. So we can bold that. And then I can just add some borders all the way around. For now, that's going to be okay. We might modify that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to skip a row. And then starting in row 7, what I want to do is I want to put in, so remember each medication had some categories. So I'm going to put in categories. I want a list of all the categories here. I also want to know what the subcategories are. So we'll put in subcategories. And then I want the list of medications to show up here. So that means if they're searching for a UPC or they're searching by medicine name or whether they're selecting on categories and subcategories. I want all the medications to show up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight those, Control B to bold them. I'm going to center that and put borders all the way around. So that's relatively easy here. I want to skip 2 columns. I want to skip one column G and one column H. In row 2, I'm going to put our button sets right down here. Inside row 4 here, we're going to start adding some information. And we want that order in white. So we're going to start in I4 and we're going to go all the way to N4. And then I want to go down a considerable amount, maybe to around 38. I just don't want it too low because I want to include enough so that you can see it within the training, meaning when I hide the toolbar here, show tabs only, I want to try to get as much in. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color that white. That is going to be for our order. And then our button sets will go up here. So we've got enough space for our button sets and our order here. Very good. So we're going to drop this back down here and we want to make sure that we are going to allow enough space for everything we do. Also here, we're going to be able to search the order. So I want to put in here, we're going to call this search order number. Then we want to have a space for the payment amount, Below that, I'm going to place the payment type. And we can use a drop down list. And then I want to know the status of the order. So the status is generally going to be paid or pending or void. Or let's just do order status. And those are going to be right justified. And then I also want to make sure that each one is going to be user entered. So again, we're going to color that in white, being consistent as we always are. And then these are going to be right justified. And then I'm just going to put borders around them all. Now, generally, I use a dotted line on the inside of these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both. Then we're going to use Control 1. And I'm going to go to the border. I'm looking for that dotted line up here. I'm going to put that on the left side. Just a little bit of consistency on that. That's good. We will get rid of those grid lines soon, but not quite yet. We may find them helpful. All right, so this is it generally. And we're going to put a logo here, a logo here. We also want to put in some information about. So I want to put in the order number here. So order number is going to go first thing. And then below that, I want to put in that order date. And then I'll put a colon on these because I'm not going to have any line separator. So the colon is going to be our separator. I do want to right justify both of those. So we're going to do just that. And then I want to left justify these. And the order date will probably format that as a date. So I'll just put in a date temporarily here. And then I'm going to format that as a short date. So we're going to go to the short date. And then again, once again, I'm going to left justify that. And I want to make sure that order number here is also going to be left justified. All right, very good. So those are just temporary. I'm going to clear that out. This is going to be a formula. And what we want to do is I want to put some information about our business here. We can put that right in here. So we're going to put in, let's see, Fredder's Pharmacy. That's the name of our pharmacy. Now you can get more customized. In other words, we can put this in the admin and then link it, but this is a little bit easier. So we'll just put in street name and then we'll just put in an email or anything like that. We'll just do a website. Fredder's Pharmacy.com. Very good. So we've got the website and we can also reduce the font of this. Don't need the font on that. So I like that. I'm going to save space for a logo right here. I do have a logo available. And then what I want to do is I want to skip a row. And then here in row 8, we're going to put the headers for our order. So the first is going to be the UPC. Second is going to be the medication name. So we're going to put in medication name. The next up, I do want to know those dosage instructions, and I've got those saved with each individual medication. So we're going to put that right here. So dosage instructions, I want to know the quantity. There's a default sales quantity. Maybe you sell 12 at a time or 10 at a time. So we do want to put that default quantity. I also want to know what is the price, the sales price of that. And lastly, the total. Great. So what I want to do is I want to format these distinctly. So again, I'm going to use Control B. We want them centered. I want borders around them all, and we'll give them a unique color. And I'll use this color right in here. I've just got to save color. So that's looking really good. Our items will go down here. Now we're going to start in reverse order. The last thing what I want is the change. So I'm going to put the balance of that change. And here we'll use line so I don't need the colon. I also want to know the payment. What is the payment amount? And then above that, I want to know the total. Above that, I want to know the tax. We're going to put this in temporarily, although it's going to be a formula, and then a subtotal. So that's kind of primarily what we want for our footer. So I'm going to right justify those. And here we're going to use this entire area for, let's say, a custom message. So I'm going to merge and center that. I'm going to highlight all of these here, and I'm going to put a border all the way around them. Left side here, we're going to use that dotted line, Control 1, if we want to launch our format cells. We're going to look at that dotted line right here. Good. So then we can put in a custom message here, something like thank you. We can use capitals U for your business. And then we want that a little bit centered and raised above. So I'm going to center it here. We can increase the font here, and then I can use italicized. Let's try 𝐷𝐻𝐼. That one looks good. And then we can make that bold. So that looks nice. And now what we have is we'll put in some slight borders here. And so what I'm going to do is go all the way down, and I want some dotted line borders. Once again, Control-1. That dotted line is going to go on the left, center, and the right. And then what I want to do is I want to make sure that the entire order has a border around it when it gets printed. So once again, we're going to add that border, this time a solid line all the way around, and click OK. All right, saving our work so far, that's certainly important. So now that we've got the framework of our pharmacy point of sale built already, we want to add a little more information for the admin for those columns A and B that are going to be hidden. So inside here, the first one we'll use is A2. I want to put that order ID. That's going to go in B2. That means the ID of the order that's been selected, or perhaps the next one that's going to be if it's a new one. Next up, what I want to do is I want to know the database row of that. So we're going to put in the order database row. What do I mean by that? When I've got a list of orders, I want to know what row is associated. I want to know that order ID 1 is on row 4, order ID 2 is on row 5. So I want to know the row that it's associated. So we're going to put that there. Next up, what I want to do is I want to know the next order ID, that next available one. If I've got 3 orders, I want to know that the next one is 4. So we're going to add a named range. We'll be creating that to help us with that. So that's the first part. Next up, what I want to do is I simply want to know the database row. When a user enters a search order, let's say they enter 1, I want to know the row that's associated with that. If they have entered an incorrect order, then no row will show up. So we're going to put this search order database row. So that's the database row for the order that they've searched for. Next up, what I want to do is I want to know whether the selected category, what row is there, or the selected subcategory, or the row of the medication. I'm going to use some highlighting and conditional formatting. So I want to know some information. I want to know those rows, and I want to place those rows somewhere. So we're going to use that in B10 through B12. So this is going to be our selected category row. This is going to be our selected subcategory row. And next up is going to be our selected medication row. So these are a little bit different. So we're going to put all of them on borders. So I'm going to hold the control down, give all of those borders. Yep, they're going to be distinct colors. These are for our selected row. I'm going to give those a distinct color. We'll use this orange. Any color is fine, as long as it's distinct. This one, we'll use this one as a yellow for our search. And we'll give these a distinct color because those are very specific for our order, and we can just use green for that. Very good, saving our work so far. Now what we want to do is I'm going to add some conditional formatting here, and I also want some named ranges. So let's start with this named ranges. So if we take a look inside our named ranges, I only have a few that are done. Inside here, I've got something called a tax option. So all I did was select this cell. This is a yes or no drop-down list, and I call this tax option. This one is called our tax name. Whatever name we're going to use is called tax name. And this one is called our tax rate. Those are the only named ranges that I have, but we need to create some more. So the first one is I want something called an order ID. I want a named range for all the order IDs. So we're going to go into our formulas, name manager, and we're going to create this called order ID. So there it is, order underscore ID. It's already set for us, but I want to make sure that it is dynamic, and I want it to cover all the possible data. So we're going to use equals offset. Then our starting, I'm going to start out on that header row in case there's no data. I don't want to create any errors, but we're going to go one row down. No columns over, so we're going to use 2 commas there. I'm going to count the number of rows. So we're going to use the count 8 to do that. And then what I want to do is I want to count all of the items all the way to a large row. And what we're going to do is we're going to exclude the header. So I'm going to do -1. I want a single column. So when I tab out and I use the shift tab back in, I want to make sure those dancing ants encompass all of the data, as you see it does, which is perfect. So that's great. That's one way to run a dynamic name range for order ID. I'm going to need another one though. So we're going to click on new, and I want another one for our medications ID. Each individual medication has one. So let's take a look in there. Well, let's escape out of there. And I want to go into this first. If we take a look at this, this is already a table. I've set a table already called medications for this. But what I would like to do is I'd like to create just a specific named range just for this medications ID. I'm going to do this one a little bit different because it is already a table. So we're going to go into the formula and name manager here. And I'm going to click on new here. And I'm just going to call this med ID. And then we're going to use equals medications, which is the name of the table. Then we're going to use the bracket, and it's going to be our med dot space ID. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to close that bracket. Because the table, I can do that. Let's add the S onto that. I want to tab out and tab in. I want to make sure that it encompasses all the data, which it does. So clicking OK. All right, so we've used the table. We've got two named ranges for this. Perfect. That's what I want. So now what we can do, now that we have that order ID, if I've got order ID 1 in here, I'm going to left justify all these to make things a little bit more clear. I want to know what database row is associated with that. So I'm going to use a formula equals, if there's an error, I'm going to use the match formula. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up one. And I want to look up that named range that we just created called order ID. I want an exact match. I want to know the row that's associated. The first one starts on row 4, therefore I'm adding 3. If it's not found, I just want to return empty. So that's going to tell us that order ID number 1 is on row 4. If we look in our order list, we look at order ID number 1, we see it is on row 4, so we know it's working properly. I also want to know the next available order ID using the max formula. That next one's going to be 4. So how do we put that into a formula? We can use equals if error. I'm going to use the max formula. We've done this many times before if you watch my videos. We're going to do the order ID, and then what I'm going to do is plus 1. And then we're going to use comma 1, meaning if there's no data, I just want to default to 1. Perfect. I also want to know the search order database, right? So if there's a 1 here, I'm going to use the same formula, equals if error, match. What am I matching this time? I'm matching whatever's the user searched for. Again, I'm going to look up the array, that order ID, which is here. I want an exact match. I want to know the row, which is 3. And then if it's empty, that means it wasn't found. Okay, I'm also going to left justify these here. All right, perfect. So now what we want to do is I'm just going to put in some random numbers in here, 10, 11, and 12. So what I want to do is I want to create some conditional formatting here for all these rows. So let's do this first. First, I'm going to just highlight a large row, and then I'm going to conditional formatting. And if we look in the manage rules, we see that there's no rules. So that's fine. New rule, I'm going to use a formula. And basically what I want to do is I want to create alternating rows based on odd or even rows so that they're easier to read when we have alternating colors. So there's going to be a formula for this. And it's going to be two conditions. So I'm going to use the and. The first condition is there has to be a value in column D. So I'm going to start in column D and start in row 8. So I want to make sure the $ is removed. We don't want it absolute on the row. So that cannot be empty. The next rule is I want to make sure that it's only even rows. So I'm going to do mod of row 2 equals 0. So when it's not empty in column D, starting in row 8, and I want to make sure that those are even rows, then I want to give it a format. And what we're going to do is we're going to do this fill. And then I've got a saved color here, which is kind of just a light. So I'm going to use this one right here. It's kind of just a very light blue. Clicking OK and clicking OK. So what that's going to do is going to color those rows. And we're going to click OK. And we want it to apply to, we'll just use a large row. So how do we know that that's working? Because there's no data in there. So how do we know? All we need to do is just add some data in here. And we can see that alternating rows are colored. Perfect. Great. But I want to add one more rule in there. When I select a category, I'm going to put that row in B10. And I want row 10 highlighted. So to do that, we're going to go back into conditional formatting. I'm going to manage those rules. And I'm going to create a brand new rule here. This time it's going to be based on the selected row. So that selected row is going to be located right here in B10. And it's going to be equal to row. So we're going to use the row. That is the formula. I'm going to give it a distinct color, very different. So we're going to use a fill effects. And inside here, I'm going to use these two colors here. And I'm going to also use a white and bold font. So I'm going to click on here. The font is going to be bold and white. And we want to make sure that that applies to, clicking OK, and applies to should match what is down here. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it right here. And we're going to click apply. As soon as we do, we see that D10 is now highlighted. Perfect. All we would need to do is when we change this row, we're going to see, change it to 11. We're going to see it skips down. Perfect. I want to create something very similar in both the subcategories and the medications. So to do that a little bit easier, I can just copy what's there and paste it here. And I'm going to paste it one more time here, but we still need to customize it. To do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into conditional formatting. I'm going to manage the rules. And now we see that we have that, but we still have the old column here. So this is not going to be B10. This is B11 this time. So if B11 is the row, this is for our subcategories. I'm going to click OK here. And then also instead of D8, we need to make sure that this is now E8. So we need to customize that and click OK. The applies to should be starting in E8 and then all the way to, let's say, 99. So this is going to be only for column E. So we're going to copy the applies to here and make sure it's on both. So there we can click apply. Very good. So I think that's going to work. Let's just take a quick look. All we need to do is remove the data to make sure it's cleared. And then we add the data here. And then we just change the row here to, let's say, 15. And it's working perfectly. We're going to do the same thing here now with column F. Conditional formatting, manage those rules. This time we're focused on B12. That is that selected row. So we're going to change this to 12. Clicking OK on that. And this time we're going to focus on column F. So we're going to edit that rule. And we're going to change it to F, clicking OK. Again, the applies to obviously is going to be for column F this time, so we can highlight that, and then we're just going to put in that large. We'll use row 99 once again. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to paste it also. So it's going to be both rules. So we've added a lot of rules here that automatically work just fine. So we're going to add the data in here, and then we're going to change this to 16 or whatever, and we see that it's gone. Okay, so our conditional formatting is done. We can delete our sample data. We can delete those selected rows. When I make a selection change, VBA is going to place that, assuming that there is a value in there. I'm going to save it. Very good. So now that we have got our admin set up, we have all of our things. Let's go ahead and add some information for the tax. I said this was just going to be temporary, but now what we want to do is we want to add it in. Let's take a little bit of a refresher. We can now get rid of those grid lines. So view grid lines. The refresher I want to show you is these named ranges. If we're charging sales tax, we go to the tax option is either going to be yes or no, the tax name, whatever it is, and the tax rate. So understanding that, we can use a little bit of a formula inside tax to either show nothing or show whatever that tax name is and the tax rate associated. So we're going to use equals if I want to know the tax option. If it's equal to no, then what do I want to do? I just want to put nothing. So then nothing. Well, what if it's something? If it's yes, they do want to charge sales tax. I want to put the tax name and I want to put the rate in there. So then I want to put the tax name. Actually, let's do this tax name, and I want to put the parentheses in there. So we're going to put that in because I want to put the rate in parentheses. So we're going to add that in there. Then another and I want to put the tax rate. But if I put the tax rate just in like that, it's not going to be formatted properly. So I want to format that tax rate. To format, I'm going to use the text command. So what are we formatting? We're formatting that tax rate. And what is the format that we're going to use? We're going to use 0.00 and then the percentage. So that's the format that's going to get it. Oops, let's finish that. Do you accept this? No, I don't want it. Yeah, we'll take that. And then the quotation marks, we're going to end there. But we want to add in the other parentheses. So we're going to add the and sign and then the parentheses and then that. So what that's going to do is going to put in that tax rate, and then we're going to do the end bracket. Perfect. We can accept that. So that's what I want, GST 8%. So if I were to change this to, let's say, the word tax, and I were to change it to 7 or 0.07 on this one, or 7%, whatever it is. There we go. And then we go back into that. It's going to automatically update that. So I like that. That's perfect. Let's just undo that because I like GST. 8%. So we've got GST, but now inside the tax, we want to add some more information. So let's start adding in these formulas here. If I put a quantity and I put a price inside here, first of all, I want to format these. So I'm going to hold down the control. On the subtotal, the total, the payment, and the change, all of those I'm going to set to the currencies. So we're going to go down here and set those to currencies. Next up, what I would like to do is I would like to put a formula in here, but I only want to show that total if both what's in column L and M are available, if there's values there. If not, we're just going to leave it blank. So we're going to use a formula, and we're going to bring that all the way down. Equals if, it's going to be two conditions. And what's the first condition? The first condition is L, and the row must not be empty. So it does not equal empty. The next condition is also M should not be empty. So we're going to look to M9, and then we want to make sure that that's not empty. Both of those conditions are met. Then what do I want to do? I simply want to multiply whatever's in L9 times whatever's in M. Otherwise, we're simply going to leave it blank. Close the parentheses. Oops, finish that. We need to make sure it does not equal empty. Double quotes there we're missing. Let's add those in. Perfect. So continuing on. So we see it's 10. If we were to change this, things are working good. I'm going to copy this formula and I'm going to paste it all the way down here. And we can just right click, paste formulas. That'll be fine. So then as we add anything here, it's going to automatically add. That's exactly what I want. We just need to make sure that in VBA, we're not deleting anything inside this. So we want to make sure that column N never gets deleted. So as we add in data, that subtotal is simply going to use the sum. So we can use equal sum. It's very simple. We're simply going to sum whatever's inside this column here. So that's easy. Now, if we're charging tax, whatever the tax amount is based on that. So again, we can use a formula for that. Equals if tax option equals no, In that case, we're simply going to leave it blank. Otherwise, what do we want to do? I simply want to multiply the subtotal times the tax rate. And that's what it's going to do. So there we go. So we've got our tax rate. If I were to change this to no, then we would see that inside our POS, it's blank, and that's exactly what I want. And our total is simply equal to the sum of whatever's in these two rows here. So that's going to sum it up. So it's either $50 if we're not charging tax, or if we are charging tax, we see that it's $54. The payment amount is simply going to be equal to whatever the user enters inside Q6. So we just need to put equals and then Q5 here. So that's the one I want. Q5 is the payment amount. So if they enter $60 here, we can see that we have that. It's going to be here. And that also should be formatted as a currency. I do want it kind of left justify. That's fine here. I'll go with currency if it's consistent. That looks good. So the payment amount is 60. And then, of course, the change is simply going to be equals our payment amount minus our total. And that's going to get us the change due for the user. Great. So saving our work so far. And then we got everything really situated here. So we've got an order status. We could probably add payment types here. So let's do that. Form is name manager. We'll just do new, and then we'll do pay types. And then we'll just do equals like we did for equals offset. Going to start this out at the first one this time, comma, 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 count A. We're going to count all those pay types, all the availables. You can add more if you want here. And then we'll do just one column. And then we'll make sure the dancing ants. So that's called pay types. Clicking close on that. You're going to go back into the POS. I'm going to look inside that payment type here. I'm going to go into the data validation here. And then we're going to click on list. And we're simply going to call this equals pay types. Great. So we see that we now have a list of pay types that we can use. And the order status, I've left that. VBA is going to be doing a lot of that for us, so that's fine. Very good. So now we've got this pretty much set up. I want to set the print range on this since it's a very fixed range. Now, the printer setup can go a lot more than this, but for our training purposes here, we're simply going to set it up. Page layout, print area, set print area. We can preview that, take a look and see how it's centered. We've got a lot more space on the left and right, so what we can do is increase the columns, especially that dosage column. I want to increase that a lot. So we can increase it from this print preview, which kind of looks good because I think we need more for the dosage and maybe a little bit more for the medication name. That looks pretty good. I just like the way that that's looking. So now what we're ready is for the button sets and we're ready for our logo. So I'm going to insert shapes and we're going to add some buttons now. So I'm going to put them right up here. And we'll use consistent with our theme. So we'll set a shape fill of this, just a basic fill. We'll use this color here. And now what I would like to do, actually we can use one of the pre-formatted ones. I like this one. So this one's going to be for our new order. I'll do all in caps. And I want to right justify. Once I have the first button the way that I want it formatted, then we can then add the rest in. So this is going to be for our new order. Next up, what I would like to do is I'd like to have a save and next, Control C and then Control V. And I'm going to place that one right about here. We're going to call this save and next. You could also do save and next. So it kind of depends on how you want to do it. Next up, I would like to have a print receipt. So again, Control V, and then we're going to add that one right in here. Once we have all the buttons done, we can then add our icons and logo, print, and then receipt. Next up, what we'd like to do is void the order. That's going to be our last button. So I'm going to copy this and paste it here. And adding void. Now, inside our Patreon, I might add additional ones like print and email or things like that. So there's a lot of ideas that I have to add on to this on our Patreon. So make sure you do get on Patreon. Of course, Patreon Silver is the same thing as our YouTube Silver. Okay, so we have save and next, print receipt. These are all looking good. And I'm just going to hold down the control. I want to then make sure they're all even. We look bold. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. I've added the bold. Things are looking pretty good. Now, what we want to do is we're ready for our icons. So I'm going to insert pictures, placing overcells, this device. And I've got some icons. Here's our logo here. We can add that in here. And I need it actually twice. I'm going to put it up at the top of our screen here. I had Midjourney make this logo for me in just a few seconds. I'm going to duplicate it, Control D, and I'm going to add it right in here. And then I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. So that's good for our logo. Next up, we're going to add in those icons. So again, once again, we're going to insert pictures, placing overcells, this device. I've got icons saved. If you want all these icons, I'll make sure to make them available as I do every week. I'm not using all of these. I'm going to not use this one. Whoops, let's do that again. All right, so let's go ahead and add that in. I just want to make sure I selected the wrong ones. Inserting pictures, placing overcells, this device. Add new, we're going to use that one. They're white, so I have to highlight. Print, I want that. Save and update. Search, we won't use. Void, we'll use. Going to click insert. So I'm going to make them all 0.2. And then what we'll do is we'll place them over the buttons. Void, I do need to do a little bit of work with. On that one, actually, I need to duplicate it. So this is going to be for our print. We'll make that button larger. Save and next, and then void. So now with void, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that, Control D, and I want to bring it down here. And the reason that I want that, in fact, it's not going to be that color. I want a stamp that's going to show that it's been voided or not. Obviously, I don't want it in white. I've got some colors to choose from. We can use this one. I can make it a little bit darker here if I want, and that looks okay. Something like that. We're going to call this void stamp. On voided orders, I want that to be visible, void stamp, giving that a very distinct name. We're going to zoom in a little bit, get those buttons lined up, get those icons lined up, and get everything looking really good. So the first thing what I want to do is I just want to hold down the control, make sure they're even. I want to group them individually. Same thing, I want to space the buttons out so there's enough for the icon. Holding down the control, making sure they're in the middle and grouping them. And we're going to do the same for each of the 4 buttons and then grouping them here. And then lastly is going to be that new order. So we're doing all of that. And once we have them spaced individually, we want to then hold down the control here. And I want them even and I want them distributed horizontally like we are here. Once that happens, I'm going to group them all together. When I do group them all together and I want to change the columns, I don't want those buttons changing. So I'm going to use Control 1. I'm going to go into the properties. I'm going to make sure they move but don't size. And that way, when I change the columns, these buttons do not change in width, which is exactly what I want. Very good. So things are looking really good. I've got just everything the way that I want it. We're going to zoom back out now. Take a quick look, check for spelling, and move forward. Okay, very good. We can hide the tabs for now. We won't need them very much. And so what we want to do is I want to populate this category with all the categories. If we take a look inside our medications, we see we've got a lot of categories. But what I really want is a unique list of categories. And then I want that list to be populated right here. Inside that, when I select any category, the subcategories of that category should list here. So the first thing what we want to do is to have a unique list of those categories. And to do that, we're going to get the help of VBA. So it's going to be relatively simple. Even if you are new to VBA, do not worry. I will be walking you through every single step. To do that, we're going to go inside the Developers tab. We can also press Alt F11 to get into the VBA editor. You can also right click on any tab, customize the ribbon, and make sure that the Developers tab is visible here. Inside that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Visual Basic. Inside there, you'll see some code. This is from my sample that I've got open in the other window. We're going to focus on this one right here. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just close the other one so that we're not confused and we know exactly what's going on. I'm just going to close it. There we go. It's closed and I've got just a single project open, which is going to be helpful. Inside this, I've got just a few pages. I don't have any modules yet. What we want to do is we want to write some code. To do that, we're going to use a module. So we're going to click Insert and then Module. And the first thing you want to do is name your module. We're going to be creating some medication macros that are focused just for these medications. So I'm going to call this medication and then macros. So any name, as long as it's distinct and you understand what is inside, to help describe the macros that you're going to be writing on the inside. And the first macro that we want to write is loading unique categories. We're going to be using some variables throughout our macros. So to do that, we'll add some variables up here because those variables are going to be used in many of the macros. So we're going to do that dimension, the last row as long. When we run an advanced filter, I need to know the last row of that data. I also want to run through some of the results of those, and we need the last result row as long variable. And also I want to know the result row as long. As we loop through some of those results, we're going to need that. I want to know the order row as long, and also maybe the medication database row as long. We might be needing that as well. Let's dimension the order database row as long and the order database column as long, and also dimension the medical ID as a string. We'll use that as a string. So we may need some of those. Let's write that first macro. We're going to call this sub load unique categories. What I want to do, the first thing before I load anyone in, I want to clear all the existing categories. In fact, what I want to do is I want to clear everything from D8 all the way. Now, when I load the medications in here, I also want to load the medication ID inside column G. It's going to be hidden, but it's going to be there. But when I'm clearing the data out, I want to clear everything out. So we're going to clear all the way from D8 through G in a large row. And that's going to be based on our point of sale sheet. So the first thing we want to do is point of sale dot range. I want to clear in some, but I also want to clear out any of the selected rows. If we remember, we've got selected rows located in B10 through B12. I want to clear those out as well, B10 through B12. What else do I want to clear out? Let's drop this down so we can see both the screen and our code at the same time. D8 all the way through G in a large row, 99. I want to clear the content, clear contents. So clear prior results. So once we cleared that up, we're going to focus on our medication database. So this is what we're going to put our focus to for now, because we want to get those unique categories. So with medication database, I want to make sure I got the name right. So I'm going to use the dot. If the IntelliSense pops up, I know I've got the right code name. Where does that code name come from? Right here. And it comes from right here in the properties. You can rename it if you want. And notice how it changed to capitals. Let me show that again. If it changes to capitals, I also know I've got the name right. Very good. So inside that, what are we going to do? I want to determine the last row. The last row of data equals, and that's going to be the last row. That's just auto hotkey that helps me automate that. The last row of data. If we don't have any data, then we can exit the sub. So if the last row is less than 4, then exit sub. Okay, if we do have data, what I want to do is I want to run an advanced filter. However, keep this in mind that if I'm running an advanced filter and I only want the unique categories, that means there's no filters, there's no criteria on this. If there is any previous criteria inside this worksheet, it's going to be used. So just keep that in mind that when you're running an advanced filter, if the advanced filter has no criteria, you need to delete any criteria that might be there. Although there is none now, let's take a look. It would show up something like inside here called criteria. So we want to delete it. It'll get created again when we create an advanced filter with a criteria. I'll walk you through that step by step. However, if we're deleting something but it doesn't exist, it's going to create an error. So we're going to wrap it on error zoom next, and on error go to 0. So it's going to be something like names. And then what are we going to be deleting? We're deleting something called criteria. Now this criteria gets created each time we run an advanced filter with a criteria. Delete. So we're deleting that. Now we're ready to run our advanced filter. And our advanced filter, again, we're just getting the unique values without any criteria. So let's do that. And I've got a shortcut that helps me create that. Remember, I said there's no criteria on this. So we're going to take that and simply going to delete it. I'm leaving it blank. All I want is the unique values. So we're only running it on categories, right? Categories is the only one. So I'm just going to start it out in D3, make sure the header, and it's going to end in D and the last row. Where do I want to place those unique categories? I'm going to place them right here. Let's clear that out as if you didn't see it. I'm going to place them directly inside N2. So N2 on the sheet is where they're going to be replaced. That's where we want the results. We want to make sure the unique equals true. Very good. Once that happens, I need to determine the last results row. So the last result row is going to be equal to what? It's going to be equal to based on whatever's in column N. So N is our last results row. And if for some reason we don't have any results, of course, we would then exit the sub. If the last result row is less than 3, then exit sub. If we do have results, what do I want to do? I want to take those results and I want to put them in columns starting in D8 in our POS. So POS.range. D8 is where we're starting out through D and the last result row. Now notice our rows start here in 3, but they start in 8 here. So I need to add 5 to that. Dot value equals what? Dot range. N3 is that first row all the way through N and the last result row. Dot value. So bring over unique categories. Great, so let's take a quick look at that and see how that's going to work out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save our work. It's always a good idea in case we've made a mistake, especially when we're clearing contents. If we clear out some wrong things and we haven't saved it, it's going to create problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this now, and we see that we have our categories that got built here, and we're going to take a look inside here, and we see that our categories here have populated, which is exactly what we want. Very good. Next up, what I want is a macro that's going to automatically populate. When I make a selection change on here, assuming that there's a value, I want to do a few things. I want to take the row that's been selected and I want to put it in B10. I also want to take whatever has been selected and I want to put the subcategories for that here. So we need some criteria to do that. To do that, we are going to run an advanced filter, but this time we're going to have a criteria. And what's that criteria? Whatever category the user selected, I'm going to put directly inside here. I'm then going to use this as our results, and I want the subcategories to come right here. So it's going to be a little bit similar of that. So let's do that. Let's write a macro for that. Now there are some similarities with the macros, so we can kind of copy and paste them and then make the updates. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to then write sub. We're going to write a brand new macro for this called sub load unique subcategories. And I'm going to copy this, and then we're going to make some updates on this. So I'm going to paste that in here. I don't want to clear out the selected category. Remember here, the selected category is here. I don't want to clear that out, but I do want to clear out B11 and B12. So we're going to make that modification, B11 through B12, or B11 and B12. I also don't want to clear out column D. I do want to clear out column E. So there we go. I want to determine the last row. We're going to need that. However, what we want to do in this one is I need to know what row has been selected. Once I know what row has been selected, I need to take whatever row has been selected. Let's say antiviral selected. I need to take whatever's in D in the selected row, and I need to put it directly inside here, inside P3. So the first thing what we need is to determine that category row. So we're going to dimension the category row as long. And then we need to make sure that there is a category row, and that's going to be in B10 if POS.range B10.value equals empty, then exit sub. And what does that mean? That basically means that without a selected category row that's located in B10, we don't know what the user has selected, and therefore we cannot load it up. If they do, I'm going to take what's in B10 and I'm going to put it into that long variable. So I'm going to copy this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go down here and we're going to say category row is equal to, and that's the selected category row. Great. So now I'm going to focus on the database. And then this time I'm not going to delete the criteria. Why is that? Because I need to create a criteria range. So we're going to get ahead of ourselves, but I know that we're not going to need this. Only when there's no criteria. So let's place that criteria. Where is that criteria going to go? We're already inside .range. It's going to go into P3. Take a quick look back in our database. P3 is where we're going to put it. That's where I want that criteria. So P3 dot value is equal to what? It's going to equal to POS dot range D and our category row and category row dot value. Set category criteria. Now what we're going to do is we're going to customize our advanced filter. So our advanced filter is going to require two columns because we're focused on categories and subcategories. So it's going to be both D and E in our original data. So I'm going to change this to E. I do need to add a criteria. So criteria range colon equals, what is that range? It's going to be equal to P2 through P3, P2 through P3. And we're going to copy it to obviously our unique subcategories. Where do we want to place them? I'm going to place them right in here. So I'm going to change that to U2. That is where we want them located. So U2 is where our unique subcategories. Subcategories here. So set category criteria, which is correct here. And then what we want to do is we want to determine the last results row. That's going to also come from column U. If it's less than 3, we're going to exit the sub. This time we're going to put them in column E. So E is where they're coming from. Also, we're adding 5, and it's going to come directly from column U. That's where our subcategories are coming from. Bring over unique subcategories. Very good. So now when do we want this to happen? I'm going to copy this macro here because we want something to trigger that. When do we want to run this loading of the subcategories? We want it to load when we make a selection on any category. That's going to be a selection change event. When I make a selection here, I want to do a few things. I want to take that row and I want to put it here, and I want to run the macro that's going to load the associated subcategories. So to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to go into that worksheet change. I want to focus on this point of sale worksheet. We're going to look in our worksheet, and I want to focus on our selection change event. If the user selects more than one cell, I just want to exit the sub. That's going to help us. If target.count_large, this is always a safety feature, is greater than 1, then exit sub. Now, if you have merged cells, you might need to change that 1. So if not intersection, we're focused on the target. I know that was quick. Range. Now that means the user is going to select some range. What are they selecting? D8 through D and a large row. We also want to make sure that what's in column D is not blank. So it's going to be and range D and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty. Then we want something to happen. What do we want to happen? Well, the first thing is range D10 must, oops, put 10 there, dot value equals the target row. Place selected row. Then we're ready to run the macro. So that's it. So let's take a look at that. This will trigger the conditional formatting once we know the row. So what we're going to do is we're going to select on that. And we see that we also have to fix that. That's not D10. It's got to be B10. There we go. So that's fine. Okay, so we can rerun the macro. Let's do that so we can get back our data, loading the subcategories up here. Taking a look at that, let's loading the categories up here. Perfect. So once we have our categories, we update that. There we go. So now we see that the rows triggered. We see that we have our subcategories that are automatically loading here. And that's exactly what I want. Good. So now we want something similar. When I select a subcategory, I want the medications then to show up a little bit similar of a macro. So let's go ahead and write that. So we have categories, we have subcategories. I'm simply going to copy this portion of it here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a macro for loading our medications. So we're going to call this sub load unique medication. Great. So inside that, I'm going to paste that in here. Now I'm going to dimension the variable for this. We're going to call this subcat row as long. That's selected subcategory row. This time I only want to delete what's in B12. I don't want to delete any of our selected category row or our subcategory row. So that's going to be important. And we only want to delete column F through G. We only want to clear out prior results, which would be the medications. So if B, actually I need to change this to B11 in subcategory, that's correct, B10. This one's going to be B11. So B11 is our subcategory. So we need that. So I'm going to change that to this. We're going to call this our subcategory row. Then we're going to change the variable to subcategory. This time is our selected subcategory row coming directly from B11. If I know that subcategory row, I'm going to look in column E and I want to place some criteria to that. That criteria is going to go directly inside. This time it's going to go in Q3. So we're going to change that up. So instead of P3, it's going to be Q3. So let's take a look at that. Q3 is going to equal what's in column E and our subcategory row. So this time we're setting our subcategory criteria. Very good. So we'll be updating that. So our subcategory rows in B11, our last row, we're determining that. Q3, of course, is going to take on that criteria. Now what we want to do is we want to create an advanced filter, but that advanced filter must include the name this time because we want the results. So we need to include D, E, and F in our original data. So that's got to change to F. So once we change our original data, because we want to include the names, where's our criteria? Our criteria is now going to come P2. We could probably use just P2, but we'll use P2 through Q3. Where do we want the results? Now these results, actually I'm going to use column A because in the results, remember I said I want to put not only the medication here, but I want to put the ID. So if I want the results in the ID, that means I have to make sure that medical ID result is also in the original data. So we need to come all the way from A through E of our original data inside our advanced filter. So this must be A. Why is that important? Because if we take a look in the results, where are those results going to come? I want the medication name and the ID. So those results are going to be W through X. So W through X2. So X2, that's where we want the results to come. Perfect. And we're going to check the last row. We're going to use W. So A through F, our criteria is P2 through Q. We're including both the category and the subcategory in our criteria. And our results are going to come from W2 through X2. We want to make sure we're going to determine the last row based on column W. If it's less than 3, we're going to exit the sub. This time it's going to come F through G, and they're going to come directly from W through X. So we want to bring in that. So let's update. Bring over, let's change that. That's going to be our medication name and IDs are going to come over. This is going to be our subcategory criteria. Perfect. So saving our work so far, and let's take a look. Let's update this to B11. B11 can't be empty, so we need to make that update. Things are looking good. So what I want to do is I want to copy this macro just like we did before. So I'm going to use Control C. Now, when do we want this to happen? When I make a selection on subcategories, that's when I want those medications to load. So that's going to be a selection change event starting at E8 and all the way down. So we can close this out for now and we can continue to write here. So again, if not intersection, this time we're focused on column E. So we're going to change this to E8 through E in a large row. We also want to make sure that E is not empty. So to do that, and range E and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty. Then what do I want to do? Range B11 this time, dot value is going to take on that target row, and we're going to run the macro to load the unique medication. So we're going to paste that in there, saving our work as I like to do, and then we're going to select on something. Good. And now we see that everything is loading in just as we want. So if we select another one, we have everything loading in. And I like the way that that looks. It's looking really good. So we have our items locating. Now what we want to do is when I make a selection change on the medication, I want to add the information here into our order. So either A, we're going to update a current line, or we're going to add a brand new one all the way up to row 33 would be the last available row. So we're going to write a macro to do just that. We're going to go back inside that module here. We'll close this out for now. Inside this module medic, we're going to write a brand new macro, and we're going to call this add or update medication. So sub add update medication, because we're going to be doing either adding one to a new row or we're going to be updating an existing one. So let's scroll up a little bit. And we'll need some variables for this macro as well. So we're going to dimension the selected row as long. And also I want to know the order row as long, as well as the medication database row as long. The reason I want to know the database row is I've got to extract information. I need to know the name, the dosage information, the quantity, and the price, and I had to extract that directly from the database. Our focus is going to be on the POS sheet, so that's where it's going to be. We want to make sure that we have a selected medication. That selected medication row is going to be directly in B12. If B12 is blank, there's nothing we can do. So if dot range B12 dot value equals empty, then exit sub. What we're going to do is we're going to take that's going to be our selected row variable, and that's going to be B12 again. So we can simply copy that and then put equals, and that is our selected medication row. Once we have that, I also want to know what is the ID. How do we know the ID? The ID is going to be located directly inside G, as we see here. Now we're going to hide that eventually, but for now we can keep it visible. So G and our selected row is going to be that medication ID. So the medication ID is going to be equal to whatever's in dot range G and the selected row dot value. That is our medication ID. Once we have our medication ID, we will also want to make sure that we determine what is the database row of that. I've got the ID here. Now I've got a named range called medication ID, formulas, name manager, medication ID. So I've got the named range. It's going to go directly inside this. I want to look up the ID and I want to determine what row. We can use the find function to do that. However, if it's not found, it will create an error. So we're going to wrap it in on error resume next, and on error go to 0. So we're going to set the medication database row is equal to the medication database, that's the sheet name, range. What is the range? The range is our medication ID, that named range that we just saw. We're going to use the find. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for the medication ID. I'm looking in Excel values and Excel whole. And I want to return the row. So we're going to extract medication row. We want to make sure it is found. So we're going to check if the medication database row equals 0, then we can put a message box, although it should always be found, medication not found. So we can exit the sub. Without that row, we cannot move forward. So assuming that we do have a row, we can now extract some information and place it directly inside that. But I need to know what row are we placing it in. Are we placing it in the first available row, or are we replacing it inside that? Now, when I add an item, I'm going to add the ID in column H. And I'm going to add the UPC and I and so on and so forth. So what we want to do is we want to determine what row is going to be placed in. So to do that, we're going to use another find. So again, once again, we're going to run an on error resume next and on error go to 0. If it's not found, we need to trap those errors. So we're going to add that in here. We're going to put in our order row is equal to dot range. I'm looking in column H, starting in H8 all the way through H33. Dot find, I'm looking for the medication ID. Now that medication ID to see if it's been found already. And now, since these are going to be hidden, I'm going to use Excel formulas instead of Excel values like I did before. And this way, I want to make sure, oops, I didn't spell values. I just saw that. That's not going to help. And this should be XL whole. What we want to do is we want to add an XL whole dot row. So we're going to look for the row, and I want to know if it's been found. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to look in this column from H all the way to 33 to see if that ID is already here. If it's not, I'm going to place it in the first available row. If it is, I'm simply going to increase the quantity. That way we don't have duplicate medication names in the same order. So now what we can do is if the order row equals 0, then we know it's not found. So we're going to put a little notation here. Medication not found. So we want to get the first available row. Order row is equal to dot range, and I'm going to use column I, and then 34 would be the last, actually 33 is the last possible row. So we're going to do I34 dot end XL up dot row plus 1, first available row. And in this particular one for the training, I've made it very small. So we see that 33 is the last one. So that means if our row is greater than 34, we've hit a limit greater than 33. So let's just check on that. If the order row is greater than 33, then let the user know message box a maximum of 25 items can be added to this order. And we can exit. Of course, you can increase that exit sub, but that's just for the training purposes. Great. So now that we know the order row, what I want to do is we want to then add in the information. So this is only for new ones. H is going to take on the ID. I is going to take on the UPC. And so all the way to price totals going to be automated. So this is what we're going to do. Dot range H, and of course the order row, we already set that. Order row dot value is equal to the medication ID. Set medication ID. Next up, we want to make sure that we're going to do I. Now, I, of course, is the UPC. Where is it going to come from? It's going to come from directly our medication database. So our medication database dot range, and we need to look at the column. So if we're going to go in medication database, we see that our UPC is from column B. And we've already defined our medication database row. So we have that here. So B and the medication database row dot value, that is our UPC number. Very good. So we want to add some more information. So what we're going to do is I'm simply going to copy that. That's not going to go in column H. It's going to go in column I. The next column is going to be J. J is going to take on that medication name. So our medication name is going to come from column C. So we can add that in here. So we're going to put in J here, and it's going to come directly from C. This is our medication name. Next up, what we want to do is we want to add in, let's take a quick look at that in our POS. So we see that I and J's name, the dosage instruction is going to go directly into column K. So we're going to put K, and our dosage instructions are going to come directly from, if we look inside our database here, medication database, we see it's in column F. So we're going to place F in there. Next up, we also want inside L. L is going to be, of course, our default sales quantity. So we're going to put default sales quantity, and that's going to come directly from G. So we're placing G in here. Very good. What else do we want to do? Well, we want to add in, next up, inside M, our sales price. So we're going to paste that in here. It's going to go to M, and our sales price is going to be in column I. So I is our sales price here. And we see that inside our purchase order, our price is going to go directly from M. So that's going to fit quite nicely in there. Great, but what if it's been found? So let's do else, item found. If it's found, all we want to do is update the quantity. So our quantity is located in column L. We're simply going to update that. I'm simply going to add in equal to whatever's currently there plus whatever the default quantity is. The default quantity is located in column G of our database. So we're simply adding that in here. Update sales quantity. Very good. So that's all we really need to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to save it, and we're going to take a look at that. Now, when do we want to trigger that? Well, I want to trigger update medication when a user makes a selection change on column F, and we need to make sure that there's a value. So once again, we're going to go into our POS here. Let's just make sure, I'm going to put some notes here on category selection. Going to go down here And this one's going to be on subcategory selection. And this one's going to be on medication selection. That's what we're going to write right now. On medication selection. Add or update order. Very good. So that means we're going to make a selection on column F8 and a large row. FA through F, we'll do 999. And we want to make sure that F is not empty. And range F and the target dot row dot value does not equal empty. Then we're going to do something. Of course, that target row is going to go in B11. So we're going to paste in that at B12, excuse me. I'm going to copy this to make things a little bit quicker. B12 is the one that we're updating with the target row instead of B11. So we're going to change that. And we're going to run the macro to add or update. And there's one other thing that I want to do, and that's just simply select another cell. So we'll select F5 on that. That way we can make multiple selections. So range F5, we can do any cell. Dot select. So let's take a look at that. Again, saving our work, it's always a good idea. I'm going to add it in here, make the selection, taking a quick look. So it got added, the dosage, the quantity. Okay, that looks good. If I select it one more time, we want this quantity to double up. So that's perfect. That's exactly what I want. And then if I select something else, it gets added in here. And once again, it gets doubled up if I make the selection. Very good. So I see the way things are looking. That's exactly what I want. We're adding these items correctly to the order exactly as I want. Now there's other ways we can add items to the order. We can search by UPC and we can search by medication name. And we want those to come down here. So if I search by UPC, I want any medications that match that UPC to appear here. If I search by medication name, I want any medication to appear here. So how do we do that? So we're going to run a macro called search medications. So let's do that right here. I'm going to close this one out here and I'm going to scroll down here. Let's clean this up. We don't need the extra spaces here. We can actually write it up here because it's a little bit before that. So we're going to call this sub search medications. Great. So what do we want to happen? We're going to focus our medication database. So medication database, because that's where our advanced filter is going to run down. So what I want to do is I want to look for medications, and it's going to be an advanced filter. If we take a look over here, we have additional criteria. This here is called the UPC. So this formula was placed in here. We're looking in the POS F4. If the user enters something, then simply display what the user has entered into the criteria, such as 91457. Otherwise, show empty. We can left justify both of these here. So that's what I want to enter into the criteria. So I want to use this as a criteria, and I want to list any medications here that meet this criteria right here. Or maybe it's a medication name. So let's take a look at that. We can clear this out. For medication name, maybe I want to know all medications that contain the string OL. So to do that, I want to then actually create a formula that's going to add the asterisk before and after whatever the user has entered in F5. This is going to be our criteria. If we know that our criteria, our results are going to come here, we can take those same results and bring them directly back into here. So let's write a macro that's going to do an advanced filter that's going to use this as our criteria, and our results are going to be here. So that's exactly what we're going to do now, focusing on that database. So to do that, we're going to determine the last row just as we've done. Let's copy this here. In fact, let's just copy, this is what I want. I want to copy this because it's almost very, very similar to this. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make the associated updates. So I can just copy this here, and then I can paste them in place of that. So the last row, our criteria is automated by formula. So we don't need any criteria. We're simply going to run that advanced filter. And the last advanced filter is going to go all the way to column E. I want to make sure to include all the data. It's got to include the subcategory as well. So we need to make sure that we don't need any of these because our results or our criteria do not contain any of these beyond our subcategory. Therefore, we don't need to include them inside our advanced filter. So what about our criteria? Our criteria, taking a look inside here, we're going to use both columns as a criteria. I'm going to use both R2 and S3. That way I can run the same macro, whether they're searching for the UPC or whether they're searching for the medication name. So R2 through S3 will be our criteria. So we can go ahead and make that up. So I'm going to place that right in here, and we're going to do that. So search medications here. So we simply need to change this from R2 to S3. That's going to be sufficient. Our results are also going to be the same results here. and our last row is here. So that's pretty much it. All we need to do is just bring that over just like that. And that's what's going to be searched. Now, when do we want to run this? Well, I want to run this when the user makes any change to either one of those search fields. And that's exactly when we want to run it. So let's just take a quick look. I'm going to run that macro right now to see if there's any issues. So what that's going to do is going to look for anything with OL. It's going to take those results. It's going to place them right here. And then it's going to bring those results over and it's going to place them right here, which is exactly what I want. Very good. So it's working good. The only difference is I would probably like to clear out anything that's here already. In other words, I don't want to select a subcategory. So E8 all the way through G down. Let's go ahead and clear that out inside the macro. So POS.range E8 through G, and we'll use a large row, dot clear contents. So that means it's going to clear it out just to make sure. So if we run it again here, we see that our subcategories are cleared out. I like that better. And now we want to run this macro either when we make a change to F4 or when we make a change to F5. So this is going to be the change events. So we're going to go back into POS and we're going to focus on our change events. So we're going to look for the change. And here's what we're going to write. So if not intersection, let's do the first one, which is going to be F4. So we're going to change this to F4 and we'll get a little bit of notation. And I want to make sure that F4 is not nothing. And range F4 dot value does not equal empty. Then what do we want to do? Well, then I want to do something else. I want to also make sure to clear out F5. So first thing is range F5. I only want to run one filter at the same time. 5 dot clear content, just in case there's anything in the other one. Next up, what I want to do is I simply want to run the macro, run macro to apply filters. Very good. And remember, this is only for F4. This is only by UPC. So let's just do that. 91457. I search, it's going to show just that. The only other thing I also want to do is I want to clear out those selected rows. I think category is okay if either one. So let's clear out all of them. B10 through B12 should also be included in the clear. So we're going to close this out. We've already got a line. We just need to add B10 through B12 here to clear those out. And that way, when we do it again, everything gets cleared out. So I like that. That looks much better. So that's working good. We see that we can enter UPC, we can select on it, and it's going to increase the quantity because the item's already here. Now what I want to do is I want to search by medication name. A very, very similar, same macro we're using, but the worksheet event this time is going to be F5. So all we need to do is close this out. And what I'm going to do is go back into the POS here, and I'm simply going to, let's add a mark to this comment on UPC search. This one's going to be on medication name search. So we're going to copy that, paste it down here. This one we're going to call on medication. This one is based on F5. So we're going to change that to F5. I also want to clear out F4. I don't want the other one being affected. I only want to run one search at a time. And that's pretty much all we have to do. So now if I search, let's say OL, once again, we see that we now have searched based on the medications. So anything containing OL will show up, which is exactly what I want. Great. Remember, we will be hiding these, but I'll be hiding other things at the same time. So things are looking really good. We've got our search, we've got our ability, way to add items. What I want to do now is I want to start macros. I want to add new order, save it next, print, and void the order. So I want those 4 functions. And I also want to be able to search an order, which we'll be adding in. Great, so let's do that. So as far as this medications macros module, we are pretty much done with that. So we've written up 4 or 5 macros in here. We're going to add a brand new module. So what we're going to do is we're going to do insert module, and we're going to give this a name as we always want to. We're going to call this order macros. And inside this module, we want to make sure that we're going to add enough macros inside that to handle all of our order needs. So sub order new. We also want to add in a sub order save update, sub order load to load the order when we search for it. That's important. We also want to make sure that we're going to sub order print. And lastly, order void. I believe that's it. So then we can fill those in, sub order void. Very good. So voiding the order. We do want some variables that are going to be used for multiple macros, so we can write those variables up here to make things a little bit easier for us. So let's do that now. Dimension the order row as long, the order database column as long, and I'll be explaining these. Last row as long, just as we have done before. Last result row as long, and then result row as long. And also let's dimension the order database row as long. We have the database column, but not row yet. And the order item database row as long. So of course, order items have their own database. So we need to know which row they're associated here. So we can see that here. These have been voided. That's why there's no price. So it's a good idea to have that. Very good. So now that we have that, the first thing what we want to do is we'll write the new order. That's relatively easy. So we're going to focus our attention on the point of sale sheet. So with POS, again, putting that period down, ensure that you have the sheet name right. First thing we want to do is clear out a bunch of fields. That's very important. So Q4, we're going to clear out H9. I want to clear out everything starting with H9 all the way. I want to make sure I do not clear out the formulas located in column N. So I only want to go through M all the way down to row 33. So H9 through M33. We also are going to have a database row. That database row is going to be hidden, but I do want to make sure to clear it out on new orders. So O9 through O33 will also need to be cleared out. So O9 through O33 must be cleared out. I want to clear out any search order, any payment amount, any status. We can clear that out, and then we'll be adding some default. I also want to clear out the order date, but we'll replace that with the current. So O4 through O7, we need to clear all of that out. O4 through O7. Great, so we cleared all of that out. And now what we want to do is to write in .clear contents, clear order fields. Once we have done that before, I want to set the next order ID. We know that this is the next order ID. I want to take this order ID from B4 and I want to place it in B2, setting up that. And why is that important? Because it's going to be linked to here. Let's link it equals, this is going to be whatever's here. So that order ID, whatever we load, is going to be located right here. So I want to take that next order ID, place it. We can do that with a single line of code, .range B2 .value equals .range B4 .value. Set next order ID. I also want to set the date. That's kind of important. And I also, this void stamp here, I want to make sure that that's not visible. So I thought we put a name. Oh, we did put a name on it. I've got two of them already. Because I cleared out this sheet, I want to just see, notice I got two. See, I want to delete that and I want to rename it. But if you have two of the same name, that's not going to work. So I'm just going to display that and we're going to delete that. We don't want that. I like this one better. So I've got one named void stamp. Make sure that that's named properly, VOID stamp. And we want to make sure that we have one. When I cleared this sheet out, that was hidden, so I didn't see that. Okay, perfect, void stamp. So I want to make sure that our void stamp is also hidden. To do that, we can do .shapes, void stamp .visible equals false. Right? We only want it visible when we load a voided order. Also, what I want to do is I want to set the date. So our date is located in N5. I want to set that to the current date. So we're going to do .range N5 .value equals date, set current date. And also let's go ahead and set our status to pending. So we're going to put Q7 is going to equal to pending. So .range Q7 .value equals pending. Okay, set status to pending. And then what we're going to do is if it's paid, I'll just change it to saved. I'll do that through VBA. So that's pretty much it for the new. What we want to do is I don't want to run this macro yet because I want to maintain this data in here. I want to run the macro that's going to save it. So let's do this macro also right now, save and update. Let's write that macro now. So save and update, I'm going to determine the last row. First of all, we need to make sure if they haven't added any items when we're saving, we want to let them know to please add a single item at least before saving the order. So that's the first thing we're going to check on the save and update. So with POS, last row is equal to, and then I'm going to use column I. Let's just clear that out. I and then 34 .n XLUp .row, those spaces will clear out. There we go. So that's our last row of variable. Okay, so if our last row is less than 9, then message box, please enter at least one medication item before saving. And then we're going to exit the sub and put the end if there. Make sure we have that. Very good. So basically, we just want to check, where's my if? There we go. So now what we want to do, just to make sure that they've entered one item, Assuming that they have, I want to now make sure to save that information. But I want to know, is it an existing order ID? Is there a database row here? Or is it a new database row? For example, if we put in a 5 here, we would see that this database row is empty. So we know that it has not been saved yet. We know it is a brand new order. So I want to look inside B3 and see that. So if .range B3 .value equals empty, then it's a new order. Else it's an existing order. So our order database row is equal to B3 if it's existing. If it's not, we need to give it a new one, .value. So if a brand new order, all we need to do is find the first available row. So the order database row is going to be equal to orders, that's our sheet, .range A999 .end XLAP .row plus 1. That's our first available row. So that's also important. So inside column A of that is our order list. Inside column A, I'm going to place that order ID directly inside B2. And we only need to do that for brand new orders. So I'm going to copy that and we're going to put in the order database row .value equals whatever's in B2 because we've already placed that ID. Set new order ID. Great. So we've got that just for new orders and existing orders. All we're going to do is just simply add that in here. So once we do that, we will have data mapping, and that's going to make it a little bit easier. You see these cells here, N5, Q5, Q6, Q7, and N36. Those are equivalent to the individual cells here. So we can see that our N5 is located here for our order date. We have our payment type Q6. We have our order status and our total down here, which is inside N36. So those have already been mapped out to save a little time. So in order to save the information to the database, all I need to do is run a loop from column 2 to what column? Equals column 6. So we see from 2 to 6 to do that. So we're going to run a loop, and that's called data mapping. So for our order database column equals 2 to 6. I'm closing our loop. Next, order database column. Inside that, what do we want to do? I want to set the orders dot cells. That's where we're going to save the information to. Order database row is the row, and then the order database column is the column. Dot value is equal to what? Dot range. Where's that range located? That range is located in our first row up here. So it's located in our orders dot cells, row 1, order database column dot value, map, and save data. Okay, so that's all we're doing. So we're saving the data to the database. Very good. So that's going to save all the information. It's going to save our payment amount, our payment type, so on and so forth total. However, it has not saved our items. We now need to save our items, and those get saved inside a database. So to do that, we need to save it either to an existing row if it's already been saved, or to a brand new row if it's not been saved. How do we know if it's been saved or not? What I'm going to do is I'm going to simply look in column O. I'm going to run from the first item all the way to the last item O. If O is empty, it has not been saved. If O is not empty, we know it has been saved and we know the row. So we're going to run a loop to do that. So we're going to put a note here, save order items for order row equals 9 to the last row. Closing our loop. Next, order row. So we're going to run if dot range, checking that column O. That's very important. O and the order row dot value equals empty. Then what is it? It is a new item. Else it's an existing item. So if it's a new item, what do we want to do? We need to assign that order item database row is going to be equal to the order items. That's the sheet. So notice I was putting the period in and nothing was coming up. So I knew I got something wrong. There it is. That's what I'm looking for. Range A dot N XL. Finding that first available row dot row plus 1. So that's our first available row. First thing what I want to do is I want to take that row and I want to put it directly inside column O because now it's been assigned. So O equals this variable here, whatever that variable is. Place database row. So what that's going to do is going to place it directly inside here, associated. So that's very important. Very good. So now that we have that database row in there, what else do we need to do? Well, I need to put in that order ID. So I need to put it in inside column A of our order items. So the first thing A, and our order item database row, it's a long variable, dot value equals, where is it located? It's located in B2 dot value. So that's our order ID. Very important that we place that order ID. What else do I need? Only for new items. So we take a look in there. This can all change, but I want to put in the order row and I want to put in the database row in column I and J. So I'm going to copy this. Then we're going to change the columns. So inside column I, we're simply going to place in the row of the order. So that's going to equal our order row, set order row. Inside column J, we are going to place our database row. We're going to use a formula to do that. So it's going to be equals, placing the formula in there using the quotation mark equals row like that. That's going to place that in there. So set database row formula. And the reason we want a formula is if for some reason the row gets deleted, everything automatically updates. So that's very important. Great. So we have all that information. Very important. If it's an existing item, all I need to do is grab the database row directly from here. So order item database row is equal to whatever's an existing database. Now for everything else, whether it's a new or an existing, we are simply going to be updating it. So we're simply going to copy all the information, total, whatever's inside our POS and placing it directly in here. So B through H is simply equal to H all the way through N. So we're going to write that in a single line of code. So order items dot range B and the order item database row all the way through H and the order item database row dot value is equal to what? It's equal to basically whatever's located, again, H through N. So let's just add that in. Dot range H and our order row all the way through N and our order row dot value. So add or update order item. Very good. I like that. All we need to do is just loop through all the orders to do just that. Very good. So we've got that up. Now it's going to be a little bit slow. We'll make it fast in a moment, but let's see if it's working. So what I want to do is I want to take this macro right here that we just wrote, and I want to assign it to this button right here and the icon as well. So I'm going to hold down the control, right click, and then paste it in here or simply click save and update. That would work fine too. Saving our work before running it in macros. Let's go ahead and save this. And we got to fix that variable order database row. That looks good. Continuing on, see if there's any order. Oops. Next order database column. Okay, so we need to update that. Forget the R there. Continuing on. So let's take a look at that. So our database rows have been assigned. I like that. Let's look inside. So this is order number 5. We're going to look in our order list. We see our order ID. Let's center that, but it does look good. So let's see. We got the date here. Pay amount 60 cash. Let's see, we don't have any status, so that's okay. Pending, that's fine, and I'll save it. I'm going to check for the other items first. Order list and then the total 38, making sure that that's correct. Yes, that looks good. And now the order items, we have all these order items got saved. It looks like all the details are here exactly as we want. That's perfect. Again, I'm going to save and next just to do that. Actually, it says save and next. So the idea was to clear it out. If you want to do save and next, all we need to do, which is kind of nice, is just add this macro, order new, at the bottom of this. And we also should probably add a message box, order saved, and then paste in that. So now when we click save and next, we can also test out the new macro. So things look good. Order saved, a new order is updated. So everything's looking good. So we see our new order. Let's also add the macro that we just created. So we're going to click assign macro, order new. Perfect. So that works just as well. Nice. Now what we want to do is we want to search for an order and I want to load that order in. So things are working quick. Let's add in the search order. So basically we need a macro that's going to load that order that we just saved and load all the details back inside. So how do we do that? New order should be clearing out all of this too. Q5 through Q7. Let's update that because I know that's not working here. Q4, it should be not O, it should be Q. Q4 through Q7. So updating that because we want to make sure that we clear that out. So let's take a look at that. That's going to work just fine. We want to make sure all that information gets cleared. pending, perfect. Continuing on, now we're going to write a macro called order load. So we can write it anywhere we want. The location doesn't matter. We've already have it here. So to do that, what we want to make sure is we have to have associated database. So that database row is going to be located right here. So the first thing what we want to do is I want to make sure that B3 contains a value. If it's empty, then we cannot move on. So we're going to focus on the POS with POS and with. So if dot range B3 dot value equals empty, then message box, please enter a correct order number. And we're going to exit the sub. We're going to assign a variable that order database row is equal to B3. So we have to have that. So now that we have the order database row, we want to add in all the information from that. So that's going to be important. So we can use the reverse data mapping that we did before. So to do that, we're simply going to copy this just as we did before that save and update. And this way, I'm going to modify it slightly and I'm going to put it down here. However, that total in the last column, if we take a look in this, I don't want to load that total in. And the reason we don't want to load in the totals is because the totals originate from a formula. So we don't want to replace that formula with a value. So that's going to remain. So in this case, we're simply going to go to 5. However, it's simply the reverse. We're now taking whatever's located inside the database and replacing it inside the orders. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we can reverse this here. So we're going to just put load data. So it's coming directly from the database into our form. Very good. So that's all we really need to do just to call 5. Now, what about our items? Our items, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to run an advanced filter. I need to know all the items that are associated with this order ID located in B2. So let's take a look inside our order items. We need to run an advanced filter, and it's going to be based directly what's located in B2. So I've set this up already, which is a criteria. I want the results to come right here. I want all the results only for the items associated with order ID number 6. To do that, we're going to need an advanced filter. So we can focus on that. So we're going to write in a little column called add in order items. To do that, we're going to focus on those order items with order items. And we write the end with. We want to focus on running that advanced filter, but I need to determine what the last row is. So the last row is simply equal to what's in column A and the last row. If the last row is less than 4, we can exit the sub out. We can run our advanced filter. And I'm using AutoHotkey that helps me automate this to make things a little quicker. However, I do need to make the updates. We see that we're going to come all the way from column A, original data, all the way to J. Our criteria is O2 through O3. And our results of our advanced filter are going to come all the way from R2 all the way through Z2. So let's go ahead and make those updates inside the code. So our original data is going to go all the way to column J. Our criteria is going to come in O2 through O3. So we'll make that here. And our results are going to come directly into R2 through Z. So we'll make those updates here, R through Z. I do want to check on the results of that. So the last results row is going to be based on column R. So we're going to set that up. If the last results row is less than 3, in fact, I don't want to exit the sub. In this case, I'm just going to go to no items, go to no items. So we're going to drop down here. I'm just going to put in no items and put a colon here. That's going to skip. If there are items, I want to run a loop. So we're going to do that. So for the result row, it's going to start out equals to 3 to the last result row and next result row, closing that loop. So the first thing what I want to do is I want to determine that order row. What is the row of the order that we need to place it in? That's going to come directly from column Y. So it equals dot range Y and the result row dot value. Once we have that, what I want to do is I want to then take all the information from here, all the way from R, but not the total because the total is formulated, basically all the way through W, and I'm going to place it directly inside our POS all the way from H all the way through PICE, but not including the total. We want to make sure that that formula stays. So H through M of our POS is where it's going to go. So POS dot range H and the order row and through colon M and the order row dot value is equal to dot range, which is our results. And of course, our results, let's go back to our order item results, are all the way through W. So R and the result row and through W and the result row dot value. That's one thing. However, let's fix that up right here. And the result row. Okay. But we also want to add in the database row. So we need one more, POS.range. That's going to go into column O over POS. And the order row dot value is equal to dot range. And it's going to come from Z and result row dot value. So this is our database row, and this is our medication details. So we've got all that coming in on a row by row basis. So that looks pretty good. So it's relatively easy. Again, saving our work so far. I do want to make this a little bit faster, but we will do that after we see that it's working. When do we want this to run? Well, there's a few things that we need to do before we make that run. When a user makes a search on Q here, let's say they're searching for search order number 3. What I want to do, I want to check here inside B6. If B6 is not empty, because it has a database row associated to that, I know that they've made a correct entry. I can then take this order ID number and I can place it directly inside B2, which is going to generate that database row here. Then I can run the macro. So that's exactly what we're going to do. So we're starting it out on Q4. So let's go. That's a worksheet change event. We're going to go back into the POS. We've already got the worksheet change events. So this is going to be on order search. And when do they make that order search? When they make a change to Q4. And I want to make sure that Q4 is not empty. So we're going to change this to Q4. And we want to make sure, and just like we did before, range Q4 dot value does not equal empty. Then we're going to do something. First thing what I want to do is I want to check. I want to look directly inside B6. If B6 is empty, we know they have not entered a correct ID. If range B6 dot value equals empty, then do what? Let the user know with a message box. Please enter a correct order number. And we can exit the sub. Nothing to do. But if they have entered correct, again, what do I want to do? I want to take that order ID, whatever they've entered in Q, range, and place it directly in B2. B2 dot value, whatever is located in Q4, range Q4 dot value. So place order ID, that's going to generate that database row in B3, which is what we want. I also want to clear out Q4. Be careful, right? If I clear out Q4 here inside this macro and I don't include this, it's going to create a loop that's going to crash. So that's very important because look, I'm making a change to Q4. It's checking for changes in Q4. Range Q4, but it's okay as long as I have does not equal empty. Q4 dot clear contents. Okay, so keep an eye on that. And then we're going to paste our macro, run macro to load. So very good. So we're going to save the work so far. So that's all going to happen when we make a change to Q4. And it's going to load that. And we're going to check for any issues. So I simply need to double click on here, look for that. And we see we've got a bug issue. Let's take a look at this. Order row M and the order row is 0. Obviously it shouldn't be. So let's take a look inside here. Why is the result empty? Why in the result row shouldn't be empty? And I believe this was a voided order. So I'm going to take a quick look inside our order items here. So order, I wouldn't have it. So why is Y empty? So let's take a look here. So we see that we have our last result row to F99. This is incorrect here. So we see that it should be R. That means our last result row is way beyond what we need. So we just want to go to here. So it went beyond, it was blank. And so that's the reason. So it should be R's were our last rows. So that's fine. So that's the only reason we got that value of 0, which we don't want. So we're going to reset it and then we'll check again here. Again, saving our work. And then we're going to speed things up a little bit. So we're going to enter that same number again here. And okay, let's do it. That was automatic. It was fast. Okay, that looked good. So again, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're clearing out. So I'm going to take a look at this, clear the order fields. I want to add this into the load. I want to make sure that our fields are getting cleared out as well. So we can do that right here. Making sure that we're clearing out all the order fields as well is every time we load it. So let's do that again, making sure they're all cleared out, and it's a little bit slow. Let's go ahead and speed this one up. So right about, let's say here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off screen updating. Application dot screen updating equals false. I just need to make sure that I turn it on. But notice here it says exit sub. We don't want that. So I'm going to then go to no items. And the reason I don't want to exit is because I need to turn on screen updating before I exit. So we can go down here and return it right here. So after the new items, application dot screen updating equals true. And that's going to make things a lot faster. Let's load in that same order here, and we see that it's a lot quicker. 4, enter correct. So 4 is not correct. 5 is correct though. Let's do that. I don't know how we skip 4. So that looks really good. Okay, so things are loading up just the way I like them. So we have new order, we have saved order. We do need to print the receipt, and we have to void the order. And we also want to clear this out. So now, as I mentioned, we don't really need to see these numbers. So I'm going to hold down the control, and I'm going to highlight all 3 of these columns. I'm going to format those numbers. So instead of the general, I'm going to go into the more number formats. I'm going to go into the custom, and I'm going to use 2 semicolons. And if it was text and numbers, I could use 3 semicolons. 2 semicolons, what that's going to do is going to hide it. Now it's still there. If we select on it, we see the number here. However, we don't need the user to see it. Those are hidden, used for admins. Very good. So I like that. Now I want to know one more thing. I want to change this order status. I want to change it to paid, but only if I see the payment is greater than the total. So let's do that, and let's make that update on the save. So that's going to be order, save, and update. So this macro here, while after we've loaded all the information here, or actually before, let's take a look. Before I've saved the information, if dot range, let's take a quick look at that. We want to know that the payment is greater than the total. If N37 is greater than N30 greater than or equal, then we're good to go. So let's do that. If N37 dot value is greater than or equal to dot range N36, then we're just going to mark it as paid. Dot value, then we're going to put paid. So we're going to put in here, what is the cell that we want to place it in? I'm going to place it directly inside Q7. So dot range Q7 dot value equals paid. Set paid. Very good. Print is going to be super easy. We've already set the print range area. If we take a look at the preview, we want to make sure that we've got it right. Select here, and then we see the print preview. So things are looking pretty good as far as the print preview. So our print range is just fine. We don't need to make it dynamic. So we can go down here to print, and it's going to be just POS.printout. And then we can set some of the parameters if we want. Preview, active printer, we'll set it to the active printer. And then ignore print areas, and then just do false. So print, very, very easy on that. I'm going to copy that. And then what we're going to do inside the print, I'm going to right click here, assign the macro to that, and paste that in here, clicking OK. Saving our work so far. Printing the receipt, it's going to print to the default printer, which for me is Snagit. And it looks pretty good. Very good. So I like that. The print's working. We want void here, and I want to make sure that everything's working. Oh, on load, one more thing here. On load, here's our load. After our details have loaded in, if dot range, I'm looking for this. I want to know if Q7 equals void, then I want to show the void stamp. Q7 dot value equals void, then dot shapes, void stamp, dot visible equals MSO true, else dot shapes void stamp dot visible equals MSO false. So we're going to show or hide void stamp. And I believe we have a voided order. So let's go ahead and look into our order list. We see that order number 1 is void. So we can load that and make sure that that void stamp is visible. That's what I want. 2 is not void. So things are looking really good. I like that. And let's take a quick look and work on, in fact, voiding that order. It's relatively easy. So all I want to do when I void an order is I want to clear out all the quantities. I want to set the order status to void, and then I simply want to save it. So to do that, it is relatively simple. So we're just going to go ahead and make that update right now inside that last macro. So first of all, I want to just let them know to get a confirmation. So we can do something like if message box, are you sure you want to void this order? And then we do a question mark, a VB yes or no, and then just do title as void order, and then equals VB no, then exit sub. So that way they have a way out in case they don't want. Now what I want to do is I want to do POS.range. That is going to be our Q7. I want to set that to void. Dot value equals void. Okay, that's going to give us that void status. Let's go ahead and clear any payment information here. So I'm going to clear out the payment amount here. Probably Q5 and Q6, clearing out payment amount and payment type. So those wouldn't be helpful. We don't need those. So POS.range Q5 and Q6, Q5, comma, Q6. We can use a colon in this case as well. Dot clear contents. So we're going to clear payment info. So once we've cleared out the payment info, I also want to clear out the quantities here. So I'm going to clear out L9 all the way through M33. So let's do that. POS.range, I guess I could do with POS. L9 through M33 dot clear contents. So here we're clear out quantities and prices, but it'll zero everything out. Once we do that, I also want to make sure that we're going to show the void stamp and save the order. So order save update. So we're going to run the macro and then POS.shapes void stamp dot visible equals MSO true. So we want to show the void stamp, show void stamp. Very good. So let's saving our work so far. This is the macro that we want to assign. So we can copy and paste it, but we only have a few macros. It's easy to find our macros. We have a short list of macros. So order void, clicking OK. So we're going to void this order out. I'm going to just click void order. It's going to give us that confirmation. Are you sure you want to void this order? If I say no, nothing happens. If I select it again, I say yes. Goes to void, order saved. So the only thing that I see here, notice when we saved the order, it cleared it out because it went save and new, which we kind of really don't want to do. So what we can do, we have a few options to change that. So we can either A, comment this out and probably just click save order. I'm just going to change this. I like it a little bit better, a little bit more confirmed. New order, save order. And I'm going to then remove the new order from the save, simply just save it. So it's a little bit more concise. And now when we void an order and we save an update, we will not add a new order, which is okay. So the order that we voided out was the last one that we had, which was this one. Let's pull that up. I want to make sure, let's do that again, because I want to make sure everything's working 5 here. So I'm going to void this order out, void. Are you sure you want to void this order? Click OK. So what that's going to do, order saved, it saves the order, it voids it out, it clears everything out. That's order number 5. Now let's load in another order, 3. And we're going to load in that voided order. We want to make sure that it does load properly. And notice, but the void stamp is not here and the order status was not changed to void. So what happened? So here's what happened. That total payment. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that the payment amount does not equal to 0. So let's just fix that right up here, because this is what happened right here on our order saved. Here, the status was set to paid because it's greater than or equal. So I want to add one more condition. And we could just make sure the status Q7 does not equal void, right? We want to make sure that it's not for voided orders. So, and we're going to put here does not equal void. So change that. Doesn't equal, and then change it to void. So only on those, we only want to show there. So I like that there. So we're going to then save that. I'm going back in here. So now we're going to revoid this order. I just want to make sure that that status doesn't change back to paid. Yes. So clicking OK. That's what I want to see. I want to see void. Let's load it in one more time. Load that. We'll do new order, which is going to clear it out. We're going to load in that. We want to make sure that status went to void and stayed void, which is perfect. Okay, that was very, very cool. I think we are good to go here. We created new orders, saved orders, printing the receipt, voiding orders. We're able to load in orders very easily. We were able to create this very, very cool search feature where we had searching by UPCs or searching by medication names, which was very, very helpful. We could also search by categories, how we listed unique categories, listed unique subcategories, and we're able to either add or update items on our pharmacy POS based on whether it's an existing. This has been a really cool from scratch training. I hope you do like these. Please do not forget to subscribe and go ahead and check out some of the links below. I've got some great products, some amazing courses to help you become great with Excel and very successful with Excel. We also have coming up our 350 workbooks and our 7-year celebration. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.